So today's Take 10 talk is presented by Judge Wende Cross. Judge Cross serves as the Hamilton County Court, a judge on the Hamilton County Court of Common Pleas. She's a proud alum of Miami University and the Salmon P. Chase College of Law. After law school, Judge Cross began her career as an associate of Landrum and Schaus LLP in Lexington, Kentucky, where she practiced insurance defense litigation. A few years later, she was recruited by the U.S. Department of Justice to serve as an assistant United States attorney, serving in both the Eastern District of Kentucky and the Southern District of Ohio. After 10 years of service as a federal prosecutor, Judge Cross re-entered private practice as the principal of Cross, Smith & Associates, where she focused on civil rights litigation, family law, and criminal defense. After having managed a successful small firm practice, Judge Cross was appointed as a magistrate of the Hamilton County Juvenile Court, where she served the children and families of Hamilton County. Judge Cross was elected to the bench in November 2020 by an overwhelming majority vote in Hamilton County. Her lifelong dream of becoming a judge is rooted in her personal values of justice, fairness, and rehabilitation. She believes, and this is a quote, "We cannot simply continue to do business in the court system as usual. The lives of victims, defendants, families, and communities are at stake." Her experience, compassion, and uncanny sense of fairness is what Hamilton County enjoys today. Judge Cross volunteers with various organizations that serve at-risk youth and families. She's also a member of a whole host of organizations and serves on several boards, including the Board of Trustees of the Cincinnati Bar Association. And she's also a member of our own Cincinnati Bar Association Professionalism Committee. We're thrilled to have her here today to talk about DEI, it's hard not to say DEI and P, how diversity, equity, inclusion, and professionalism work together. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, and good afternoon. Professionalism. We've all used that term in some form or another to describe people in the workplace, marketplace, or perhaps even been described as someone who embodies professionalism ourselves during our career. When asked to define professionalism, most people, your average person, describes poise, respect, good manners. In dominant corporate culture, people have strived to be professional by dressing professionally or in business attire, keeping themselves well-groomed, and leaving personal matters, quote unquote, at the door. Today, according to the U.S. Department of Labor, employers want new workers to be responsible, ethical, and team-oriented, and possess strong communication, interpersonal, and problem-solving skills. Wrap these skills up all together, and you have an insider's view into what professionalism is, right? But what I want to share today for your consideration is this. As with so many other norms, the accepted definition of professionalism is being challenged and is transforming. The term professionalism has and is evolving as the term work is being defined. One motivator of this shift is the widening effort to build an inclusive and equitable workplace. Organizations that take this work seriously must look at how their construction of professionalism clash with their professed advocacy of bringing their employees, bringing their whole selves to work. When we think about professionalism in 2022, we must also consider hybrid work environments and changing forms of interpersonal communication. The biggest challenge with professionalism is ensuring that all employees, including candidates for employment, understand what professionalism is within the context of that organization and the specific job function they're taking on. Culture and identity often play a role in how candidates and employees engage and connect. Thus, parties must be clear about what professionalism means within the context of an organization. So why is professionalism getting a rebrand now? 2 words: millennials, pandemic. In the mid-2010s, millennials ascended into the workforce as the largest population in our workforce. In 2016, they comprised 1/3 of employees. Whenever a new generation enters the workforce, it brings with it its own set of expectations and norms. Workplaces have already embraced a higher tolerance of internet slang, casual dress, and increased autonomy as to where people choose to work. Millennials simply want to work in diverse organizations. The pandemic has been a great equalizer, not necessarily because everyone has had the same experience to the pandemic response, but because it's brought everyone back to recognizing each other as human. Beginning in 2020, with the onset of the pandemic, we all witnessed a shift in focus in equity in our policies and cultures. Younger generations are coming into the workforce looking for more cohesion between their values and work lives. The millennials, Gen Z, care deeply about fairness. For them, diversity and equity and inclusion are fairness issues, and they want to see them reflected in their workplaces. People of color or other marginalized identities are rightfully asking for policies to respect cultural and social differences. And we have more support than ever from well-placed allies. In sum, workers are holding organizations accountable for how they've historically excluded and harmed many marginalized people. And I read somewhere that the professionalism we know today will someday be outdated and linked to cultural bias. If we take a minute to unpack some of the ideas in professionalism, it becomes clear that our standards of professionalism have traditionally been rooted in white, male, middle class, heterosexual norms of behavior. Now, the standards of professionalism that evolved from those contexts serve to legitimize a particular way of communicating, behaving, and dressing, but at the same time, delegitimizing ways of being. These norms are unspoken, unwritten rules for acceptance in some, many, most organizations. In this light, professionalism requires assimilation into mainstream, which is a code word for white, masculine, middle class, heterosexual ways of being. For some, having to conform to this standard fit like shoes on the wrong foot, where people have to hide, minimize, or deflect some aspects of who they are in order to fit into workplace norms of professionalism. But the good news is that's where DEI comes in. DEI is an effort to make our workplaces and our lives better. By promoting DEI, We can work to improve the lives of those traditionally marginalized throughout history. So what does DEI mean and stand for? Diversity, equity, and inclusion. So diversity is the presence of things that are different from one another. We know what diversity is. It's different race, culture, gender, socioeconomic status. Equity involves trying to understand and give each person what they need in order for them to achieve an equal footing in life. Now, equity is not equality. Equality is everyone starting at the same place. Equity focuses on helping people obtain what they need to get to a place where equality is actually possible. For example, it's the company who has policies and procedures that fairly account for physical and cultural differences of its diverse employees. Inclusion. Inclusion focuses on involving everyone and making sure that no one is excluded for reasons like race, religion, gender, sexual orientation, or disability that they may have. Think of it this way. Diversity is being invited to the party. Equity is making sure the venue of the party is wheelchair accessible. Inclusion is asking everyone to dance. Traditional notions of professionalism focus on conformity, hiding. But I believe we are moving toward a more inclusive conceptualization of professionalism by embracing notions of authenticity, which focuses on the humanity of the individual and lived experiences. For example, just this year, Congress passed the Crown Act. Now, the Crown Act stands for Creating a Respectful and Open World for Natural Hair Act. It is federal protection which prohibits racial discrimination based on one's hair texture or hairstyle, commonly associated with a particular race or natural origin. Now, in preparation for this presentation today, I spoke with a good friend of mine who is a DEI expert. Her name is Dr. Deepika Andagarapu. And she said that it is projected that in 2040, the city of Cincinnati will be majority minority residents. So what can each of us do to usher in this transformation? First thing we can do is connect with someone who doesn't look like us, talk like us, or have the same lived experience. We can acknowledge and respect each other's lived experiences. Confront unconscious bias, not just in others, but in ourselves. We can become allies and provide peer support for those who don't look like us and haven't had the same lived experience. And we can engage men as allies and champions in this effort. For those of us who are leaders, we can lead inclusively in our organizations. We can inquire and or initiate equity audits in our organizations. We can institute colorblind hiring practices, delete names on resumes, include people of color in the interviewing panels. In sum, ladies and gentlemen, professionalism is by no means over. It's just changing with our people. Thank you for listening.